Hello, this video will go over the multi-language abilities in EmpowerDB. We're going to go over how to make it so that your own database users can experience EmpowerDB in English or Spanish. And we're also going to go over how to make people who fill out your offsite forms be able to experience those forms in whatever language you choose. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to take a look at is when we mouse over our username on the top right, we see this database language drop down to switch between English or Spanish. This is something that all database users will have. This is not something that as an administrator you have to activate. It just comes with everybody. And when we click that to go into Spanish, we see that almost everything on the page has now been translated into Spanish. But there are a few things that have not been translated into Spanish. And these are the parts of the database that you have control over what the text is. So now we need to go through a process of setting up the system to say, okay, this is what we call this program in English, and this is what we call this program in Spanish. And same thing with like anytime we see client, staff, those are all English words that are set in the system that you have the ability to change in English. So now you have to go and change them into Spanish. Okay, so to do that, let's get back into English here. We're going to take a look at database administration. And the first place we want to go is go down to the database settings and go to our general settings. And let's look at this language settings section here. So there's two fields in here. The first is system default language. That's English. So, you know, the predominant language throughout your organization, you would set that to that. Probably not going to be changing this. What you want to look at here, though, is languages allowed. So this is a field that specifies which languages you're allowed to set different translations for. So if all you're trying to do is make it so that the user interface of EmpowerDB is translated into both English and Spanish, then this is the first step for you. You just say, okay, I want to also be able to translate things into Spanish. But if you're trying to get like your offsite forms to be translated into these three languages, then you would set it like that. So if you're trying to add in a language that's not in this list, just let us know. It's pretty relatively easy for us to add a new English to that language to that list. It's just there's 60,000 languages in the world, so we didn't feel like adding them all in there at first. Okay, so those three languages are fine. We'll go ahead with that. Save changes. Now let's go take a look at how we're gonna say, you know, what this Spanish and Portuguese translations are for certain things. So if one example here, we can go to our program list and say, okay, our hotline program, this is what it's called in English. And now to tell it what this should be called in Spanish or Portuguese, we have to click this Add Translations button here. If you're not seeing this Add Translations button next to a text input, it's going to be one of two reasons. Either you didn't do that step before where you specified multiple languages to translate into, or the other reason is we just haven't turned that text field into a translatable text field yet. There's kind of a little thing we have to do to switch it around, and the database is very extensive, so we surely could be missing a spot. So just let us know if that's the case. Okay, so this one has that. We click to say, okay, I want to add translations for this. And it's assumed that hotline is our English word for it, and then we would be able to enter in our Spanish word for it. And then when we were switching, if we switch into the database language being Spanish, it will show the Spanish translation and not the English word. Okay, and then we can keep going along like that and say, okay, also here's our Portuguese word for it as well. But again, remember, the user interface of EmpowerDB can only be in English or Spanish. Okay, so you're going to see those text fields all throughout the system. So I don't need to go through and explain to you all of the ones that are there, but just like anytime there's text that you type in English, you'll see that there. And then just the last thing I'll say about this is if there's some sort of text that's like a proper noun that really you don't you would never translate, it's totally fine to leave that text like this and not add in the translations. The system will just know this is the word that I'll use always, and it won't put any translations. Okay, other thing to make sure you're aware of is the database wording section here. So this is where you can go through and say, all right, I don't want to use the word client. It's not the best word for us as an organization. I'm going to change this to be participant, and I'm going to change this to be participants. You can go through and look through all the different things that you as an organization can switch the wording for. But this is where you would say, okay, I will use the word client for English, and then in Spanish, I'll use the word cliente. Okay. Do note that we are currently in the process of figuring out how we want to treat kind of these gendered words in Spanish. So you can set, this to be, like that. But then in Spanish, there's other like adjectives and verbs and stuff that comes around it. They would also have to have this, alternate gender way of writing things that probably won't look correct. So please just get in touch with us if you have thoughts about this, or if something just is looking really wrong and is difficult for Spanish people to read because of how it's all set up. Right, so you would potentially go through here and set up all of the different translations for the different words that you want to use in the database. And when you did that, that'll fix places like this where the system is saying, okay, I'm going to use the word for client right there, and it'll show the English version or the Spanish version, depending on whether you're in English or Spanish. All right, one last setting to let you know about for setting up your offsite forms. So let's go take a look at this hotline form that we've got set up. So let's say that we've already gone in here and translated all of our fields. Great. Not re-recording this. Thanks, Windows. Let's say you've translated all of your variable names and options and got all that set up into your 3 languages. You would also need to do another setting here and say, okay, I have translated this form into English, Spanish, and Portuguese, and want to save changes on that. And now when I open up this offsite form, I have the option right up top to select language, and I can click to say English, Spanish, or Portuguese, and hopefully having this be right up front and in the language word in that language will get people's attention and know that they can switch the form into the language of their choice. All right, I hope this video was helpful for you, and we are very excited to be offering this multi-language support. Thanks.